Hey guys, Corey right here. So I want to spend a couple minutes to just kind of talk to anybody who spends any amount of time online and share with you how you can start to protect yourself online, protect yourself from the internet. You know, we've heard a lot over the last couple of years about this internet privacy and security, and they kind of get lumped together, although I think they're two pretty separate things. You know, privacy is the one that gets the most of the attention. What does Facebook know about me? And Google, what do they know about me? And what's the information that they have on me? And we want to figure out ways that we can purge that data so they no longer have access to it, and we focus a lot of our time and attention there. But the reality is, Facebook and Google just want that data so that they can make money. They don't have any malicious intent. In fact, they don't even really know who I am. I'm just a series of data to them so that they can serve ads and they can go make money. But the security side of things is where I think things get really real. That if somebody is trying to take advantage of you online through your lack of security online, they now see you as a real person with a real bank account and a real family and real assets, and they're going to try and go after all of that they can if you allow them to. And so there's a couple steps, and I'm going to give you 4 very clear things that you can do by the end of this video to protect your security online and make it really, really difficult for anybody to actually get into that and get into any of your online accounts or access any of that information that would be valuable or useful for them. But before I get there, I want to just kind of walk you through kind of a quick mental exercise. So think of if, let's say Gmail is your primary email account. And let's say tomorrow you go online, you wake up and you go to punching your password to get your Gmail, and all of a sudden it says incorrect password. But you know what the password is. You figure maybe caps lock was on or you mistyped it. You try it again, incorrect password. You try it a couple more times and all of a sudden it hits you. For some reason, something's happened and your password is no longer your password to your email account. And so you probably reach out to Google and you do a couple things, and after a day, you realize that this was no accident, that this was somebody who intentionally got into your Gmail account and changed your password to lock you out, and they now have unfettered access to all of your Gmail account. Now you may say, not a big deal. They're gonna get some juicy emails in there. Maybe they'll find a couple things, maybe even a bank statement. But at the end of the day, there's not really a lot in there that they can do anything with, until you realize that the only way or the easiest way to access every single other one of your accounts online is to just reset the password. And then all of a sudden that goes to the email, and now they can start to reset every single password that you have. So they would need to know a little bit of information about you, and sometimes they do, but sometimes they can just go to Wells Fargo and Bank of America and Chase, type in your email address and see which one gets a reset password link, and then they know that's your bank and they can reset the password and get in. And so now they can start to access just about anything that they want online by simply using the reset password. Now let's take this a step further, and let's say that all of a sudden you're driving one day and you look down at your phone and you realize that you don't have any cell access, and so you're like, well, maybe I'm just in a bad area, until you get back to your house where you always have reception and you still no longer have reception, and you realize something's wrong with your cell phone. So you call your cell phone service and you say, hey, listen, I'm not getting reception. And they say, well, you changed your SIM card just yesterday, which is why it's not working on that SIM card. And you go, no, I didn't. And then you realize that somebody has also accessed your cell phone, that they've called the cell phone company and they've somehow convinced them that you needed to change your cell number from one SIM to another, and that change has been made as well. And so now that same hacker has access to all of your email, essentially all of your online accounts, and your cell phone as well, which is probably where you get all of your 2-factor authentication text messages sent, right? Here's the 6-digit code that you need to log in. And now they have access to everything that they need to start to take over your identity and take over all of your accounts online. Now, eventually you will probably to some extent get all that sorted out, but wouldn't it be nice if you could just protect that ahead of time? There's something in life that I always like to talk about called asymmetrical risk. And asymmetrical risk goes like this. It's what helped Jeopardy James basically break the entire Jeopardy system. What he realized is that when it comes to double Jeopardy, that you can risk a certain amount of money on a question, and if you get it right, you get that amount of money, and if you get it wrong, you lose that amount of money, which essentially means that there should be a 50% chance of getting it right or wrong, because the opportunity or the risk of what you can gain or lose is exactly equal. But he realized that 80% of double Jeopardy questions get answered correctly. And if you're an above average player, that goes up to probably 85 or 90% of the double Jeopardy questions that you can get right. So if you could have an opportunity to have an equal amount of risk when you knew that the odds were 8 times to 1 in your favor, you would take that every single time, right? And what I like to think of is that this protecting your online security is an asymmetrical risk thing, and it's not with money, it's just with energy. That it doesn't require a lot to protect yourself online. Like I said, I'm gonna give you 4 really quick and easy steps to do that and make it a part of your everyday life. But if you talk to anybody who's ever had their identity stolen online, what they wouldn't give to go back and employ these 4 steps at some point previous in their life to prevent all of the heartache and the headache and the wealth loss that takes place when somebody can get into your accounts and has malicious intent. And again, I think why so many people don't take these steps is because the odds of that happening are very unlikely. But the odds of getting in a car accident are pretty unlikely too. I still wear a seatbelt every single time I get in the car because it's not that much energy to put a seatbelt on, right? And that's what your online security is gonna be like. So before we get into the 4 steps, I just want you to assume right now that all of your most vital information online is already public, that your social security number is already known. I mean, think about how many job applications you put it on, and credit applications and housing applications. You need it for just about everything. And to think that every single person was a perfect steward of your social security number, they looked at it once, put it into a system where it's perfectly encrypted, and then shredded the document is absolutely crazy. Trust me, your social security number can easily be obtained if somebody wants to obtain it. All of your banking information. We don't use checks very often anymore, but if you think about it, your routing number and bank account number are at the bottom of every single check that you provide to somebody. It's how the bank knows how to route the money. And so if somebody wanted access to any of your bank accounts, all you need to do is try and get a check from you. Now, we don't do checks a lot very often, but you do checks from time to time, most likely. And to think that for decades that we were giving this information out and it just went nowhere seems a little bit crazy. Fortunately, there wasn't a lot of malicious intent when we were passing around checks, but assume that your social security number, your bank account information, and all of your personal information, your address, your email address, your phone number, your name, assume all of it is public. And essentially, all the things that you would need to steal your identity are right there, right? To apply for credit, to get a driver's license, all of those things are now at the fingertips of just about anybody who wants it. But we can put some securities and protections in place to make sure that that can't be used maliciously against us. So the first thing that you can do, use a password manager. This is like basic internet security 101, right? Is what you would call it. So use a password manager. I personally use LastPass. I believe a family plan for LastPass to get 6 people is $36 a year, which is crazy to think, $4 a month. And you can have all of your passwords stored. Now, why I love a password manager is for a couple reasons. Number one, if you ask me my password to anything except for maybe my Domino's account, I don't know what it is. I have zero clue what it is because I use a password manager, which means every single password is unique and every single password is entirely difficult to spell or understand. It's not just my kid's name. You can't easily guess it. It's not a series of words. It's numbers, characters, and letters. It's generally 12 to 16 characters long. And because I don't need to remember it, I can get as complex as I want. So every password that I have is both secure and complex. The second thing that I love about LastPass is that I really just need to remember one password. That's my password to get into LastPass. So I can make that challenging and difficult, but something that I can remember. And once I know that, I have access to all of my passwords. It even auto-completes them on most websites. There's a mobile app, so if I'm in apps, I can auto-complete in apps as well. And so once I log into my LastPass, I don't ever have to remember or type another password again. So it's not only more secure, but it makes it a lot easier. I just have to remember one password and I can access it from just about anywhere or any device. So use a password manager. It's security 101 online. A document that has all of your passwords that's stored in your Google Drive is not secure and does not work. Using a similar password, but you just kind of change the last letter, doesn't work. And what happens most of the time is that each website requires something different, whether it's 7 characters or 10 characters or needs a letter or needs a character, but can't use that character. You end up forgetting most of your passwords anyways at some point. And so just make it easy on yourself and make it a lot more secure. Use a password manager for all of your passwords. That is step number 1 to protecting yourself online. Step number 2 is using two-factor authentication for any, what I would call, vulnerable points of entry to your online presence, right? And so two-factor authentication is most commonly known when you you go to log into something and they send you a text that's usually a 6-digit code that you would need to enter, and then it would then allow you in. That's a second factor to authenticating. So password is the first factor for authentication, and then that code is going to be the second factor for authentication. 2 things I'm gonna say here. Number 1, this should be done for every single major point of entry, right? So we're talking certainly your Gmail or your main email account, right? I already talked to you about how that is really the brain or the heart to all of your online presence, because you can easily reset passwords by simply having access to that one. In addition to your main password, your main email, any of your bank accounts or financial accounts, all of those would probably be a major point of entry just because they're so close to where your actual money is and you don't want that getting transferred out. Obviously your password manager. So use two-factor authentication on all of these. But I'm going to suggest that you don't just use text two-factor authentication, but you actually use an authenticator app or something that requires you to have a physical device that has the code for you. And the reason I say this is, remember that first example where I talked about how somebody gets access to not only your email, but then they get access to your cell phone. Stealing your cell phone number is really, really easy. Sometimes they steal it, and so it actually knocks you offline. They move it over to an entirely new SIM. Sometimes they can just mirror it, and so they can steal your SIM card information. so that they're seeing everything that you're seeing on your phone. And so as that two-factor authentication text comes in, it's coming to both you and them. They can then access all of your accounts. So if you get away from having it being text-based, then it doesn't rely on your SIM card. It actually would take place on your mobile phone. Basically, you would have an app that you open up, it's linked to your accounts, and you would need your actual phone with that actual app in order to get that code. And it resets every 10 seconds or something. So when you look in to get into my Gmail, I open up my Authenticator app. It'll ask me once I punch in my password for the 6-digit code on my Authenticator app, and every 10 seconds that's changing. And so I would need to have access to my exact cell phone at that exact moment is the only way that I could get in. It makes it so that anything with two-factor authentication, as long as you had your cell phone in your possession, you would know that hackers could not be getting into your email, getting into your bank accounts, or getting into any of those major points of entry. So don't only use two-factor authentication, but also consider making sure that it's not done via SMS or via text, that it's done through the Authenticator app or something that is a actual physical piece that you hold, not a code that gets sent to you by text message. Okay, so we're using a password manager, so all of our passwords are unique and different. We are using two-factor authentication for all of our vulnerable points of entry. We're not doing it via text, we're using it through the Authenticator app. The third thing that I want you to do is I want you to set a PIN number with your cell phone provider. So some require it when you set up an account and some don't. If yours doesn't require it, I want you to call them right now and ask, do you require a PIN number to make changes? If they do, great. If they don't, make sure that you set up a PIN. This is still not perfect, right? You're relying ultimately on whoever works at Verizon or AT&T or Sprint to require that password to make those changes. Every now and then, they always say that, that the human factor to any sort of security is always the most breachable. And so if somebody calls and they're persuasive enough that they say, I forgot my password, but I have this really important reason that I need it, they could still potentially get through and port your number onto a different SIM. But hopefully they're wise enough to that. They wouldn't let that happen. And certainly if you have a security pin, it makes it more difficult for them to jump that barrier. And so that's gonna be the third thing. The fourth thing is gonna be freeze all of your credit. There's 3 major credit bureaus. There's Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. It is absolutely free to freeze and absolutely free to temporarily unfreeze your credit or permanently unfreeze it as well. Although I'm going to suggest that once you freeze it, you would only temporarily unfreeze it when you need it. Now, is this somewhat inconvenient? Yeah, it takes about an hour probably to get all 3 of those accounts set up with your freeze. Make sure that you store your PIN and the websites of where you need to go to unfreeze those in your LastPass or whatever you're using as your password manager, so that you can really easily access those. And then when you need to unfreeze your credit, and this can be for anything, it can be for getting a new cell phone where they need to put you on a cell phone plan. It could be obviously if you're trying to buy a house or a car or potentially apply for a credit card or all these things, right? And every now and then it's gonna be inconvenient. But guess what? It's far less inconvenient than if somebody actually signs up for a credit card in your number or in your name and social security number, or somehow figures out a way to steal your identity. I promise you, the small inconvenience of every time I need to buy a car, get a new cell phone, and they need to run my credit, and it's not even a hard pull, they just need to soft run my credit. I need to go in and unfreeze 3 credits, and I can set an end date. So if I'm doing it today, and let's say it's August 1st, then I could set it so that August 7th it'll automatically refreeze, and so I don't have to go refreeze it, but for a 7-day window, anybody could access and pull my credit, and you're vulnerable during that window, but not before or not after. And so these are the 4 things that you can really easily do to protect yourself online. And remember, they really serve as two measures. The first one is that it just makes it more difficult to actually access any of your online accounts or set up a credit card in your name or steal your identity in any capacity or get into your Gmail and start changing passwords to other systems that you have. It makes it far more difficult to do that. But also, if you were a burglar, you're gonna look at the house with the security cameras and the alarm and the guard gate and the one right next to it that has nothing, and you're gonna go to the one with nothing. And so you just become a less desirable target to anybody who has malicious intent as well, because you've already put those barriers in place. Trust me, hacking you can be done really, really easily by a very low-level hacker if you do not have the right protections in place. If you do have the right protections in place, it becomes very difficult even for the most advanced hackers. And so those are 4 things that I would encourage everybody to do to protect your online security. Don't worry so much about your online privacy until you've really squared up your online security. That's the thing that will have far more negative impacts in your life, real life impacts, if you don't take the time to secure those and shore those up. And again, it won't happen to everybody, but it could happen at some point. And at that point, you will just wish that you would have taken these 4 steps if something like that were to ever happen to you. I don't ever hope it or wish it, but I just wanted to say these are 4 things that I do that have helped me protect my security online. I sleep a lot easier at night knowing that I spend a lot of time online, but I have these in place to really protect me, and hopefully you guys can do the same. Hey, leave in the comments if there's something else that you do that maybe I missed that you do to protect your security online, if there's some other way of doing it. And if you like this video, please subscribe. I'll have a lot more videos like this coming out. Like the video video, share it, comment. I'm trying to grow my subscriber and follower base on each of the social medias, and would love your support in doing that. Hopefully you enjoyed this content, and I'd love to give you more every single week. Thanks, guys.